Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. We are so glad to have you guys here today. And don't forget, before we leave today's broadcast, to go over and take our Promote, Profit, Publish quiz. You can find that at promoteprofitpublishquiz.com and find out where you are in promoting your business, your books, your products, and services. Today, we have a really awesome guest, and we're going to talk about something a little bit different for all you writers. We have Wendy Darling, who's a transformational change expert, speaker, and author. Wendy is the founder of Miraculous Living, a personal and professional growth organization offering presentations, seminars, retreats, private coaching on dealing with matters of the heart. Wendy is a recognized expert on navigating change and achieving your desired results. Her transformational system, Healing Harmonics, provides the vehicle for achieving those results with greater ease and speed. Wendy has over 30 years of experience as a business and life transformation expert, master healing practitioner, management and organizational development consultant, manager, executive, entrepreneur, radio talk show host, and keynote speaker. Yay, Wendy, that's quite a little resume. Welcome.
I'm a busy girl.
I guess you are.
Thank you.
So in the area of transformation, we're going to talk about sort of writer's block and what writer's block is really telling you in your life. Because not many people realize that writing a book is not only a journey, a transformation for the people you're writing it for, but it becomes a transformational vehicle for yourself as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Wendy, tell us about your writing experience. You wrote your book very quickly.
I did. My first book. I have two that are still in the works. One is about 96% complete. The other is about 50%. And I've held back on the second one for personal reasons. But my first book, I had actually attempted to write a book on and off for many years. And I would get a few chapters written, but then I stopped. And what really helped me is I actually worked with somebody who helped me kind of get out of my insides, what wanted to be expressed. And so we just kind of mind dumped a whole lot of things and then organized it in a way that chapters eventually got identified. So I had a pretty loose sense of what I wanted to have in my book and what I did for myself. Because I remember the first time I thought about writing a book, it was like, how could I possibly write 180, 200 plus pages of something? Mm-hmm. And so what ended up happening was I went, well, I've written a lot of articles. Isn't a chapter kind of like an article? And the reason I'm mentioning this is I think that is sometimes what interferes with people writing because they see it as this big project instead of chunking it down. And I even remember contacting my publisher back then saying, oh my gosh, I'm already on chapter whatever, and I don't remember the details any longer, and I am only at X number of thousands of words. This is going to be just this tiny little book. And yet I just kept chunking, I kept moving forward, and I would structure time. I would schedule maybe a half hour sometimes, usually an hour. On the weekends, I would get maybe a couple of hours in. I never expected myself to write further because what your audience wouldn't know is I've recovered from a traumatic brain injury. So, being really hyper-focused for a long time can wear me out. So this even worked for me in that regard. So little by little, I was able to make progress. And yet there was one morning that I had earmarked to start writing, we'll say at 10 a.m. I don't remember any longer what time it was. And I'm cleaning my house. I'm wiping the granite countertops. I'm doing all these things. And I'm thinking to myself, would you just sit down and write? And so I kept avoiding it. And I'm like, what is going on with me? And I'm kind of a neatnik to begin with, but this was like over the top. So what ended up happening was I had to put force into sitting myself down. And what was really cute was the chapter that I was writing had to do with what's called mischief makers, the things that get in our way of actually doing what we need to be doing. So what was really funny about it was it gave me information to start writing my chapter, because I literally saw how I was avoiding a task that I had decided that I was committed to doing. So getting back to what you're talking about is, I think writer's block happens for a multiple number of reasons, but the ones that come to me first is what I mentioned earlier. I think sometimes we make something too big. Mm-hmm. And one of the gifts that I eventually got to in my writing, because writing now, quite honestly, comes to me pretty easily because I don't put pressure on myself. I let myself just ramble, on the keyboards if I need to. And so to give myself that kind of permission really makes a big difference. Secondly, I think, so first of all, lower expectations and just start. Even if you feel you have writer's block, I think it's really good, maybe not in your book document itself, but just write, get things out. What are you frustrated about? What's bothering you? What are you concerned about? And to really allow yourself to, just start kind of like jumpstart the motor. And we kind of hit on this earlier. Sometimes a timeout is needed because something else is trying to get in and it's just not in alignment with you at this point in time. Because I really believe when you write from your heart and really keep in mind who you're writing for, who's your avatar, who are you intending to read your book, I think it makes it a lot easier. If we keep it in essence conversational and not trying to be, I don't try to be the smartest kid on the block. I don't even try to be the smartest kid anywhere. And, I just trust that something that I'm sharing, somebody might be interested and benefit from it. So I really don't know, so I don't have those high expectations. So if somebody is having writer's block, go do something different, draw, color, do something creative to get movement, go outside for a walk, get a little bit of exercise, anything you can do to move the energy within your system can really be helpful in that regard.
Very good. Very, very good. You and I talked a little bit earlier. You wrote a nonfiction book. Most of mine have been fiction, about that stopping point that we have. I know for me, I was writing fiction that was somewhat based in reality with actually my book that sold over 25,000 copies had a lot of truth in it. And I kind of felt like it was a stopping point where like the universe was getting my attention and saying, I love this little creative storytelling bit, but you need to heal something here. Do you find that is an element of when you said that awareness that, it's not only a journey for the reader, it's a journey for the writer?
Absolutely. I think that's where a lot of people either get stuck or struggle a little bit. Even early in my book, I shared some very heartfelt, vulnerable places. And I remember even talking to my publisher back then, because I really debated, should I really be dishonest? And obviously I decided to be that honest, but it felt very naked for me to do that. But at the same time, I've had people get back with me in different capacities going, oh my gosh, I can't believe you went through that. I can't believe. So we never know how we may impact somebody else by being willing to be vulnerable. And quite honestly, we are at a time where we need more of that. I think that writing is so healing, so transformational in itself. It's possibly one of the reasons for many, many years I've really liked, writing or blogging, writing my books. As long as I don't think of it as a book, I'm okay. I still get caught up in, oh, it has to be this. And so I do feel that it brings about healing to places, especially whether it be, even though you were a fiction book, a lot of it was based on things that were real to you. You changed it up in a way. And mine is nonfiction, and so it was just plain real. And so I do think that it's very transformational. I've known people that have written books who, I remember a really good friend of mine, when she was writing her first book, she wanted to hire somebody to write her book for her. And yet there was something inside of her that, because she didn't feel she was a good writer, she didn't feel that, for whatever her excuses were. And then she realized, I have to be the one to share this. Mm-hmm. And it was such a transformational experience for her. Because, the other thing is sometimes we don't even realize how much brilliance we really have to share. It doesn't mean that it's in science or rocket science kind of verbiage. But, there are times I've picked up my book. My book is right behind us. And I pick it up and I just open up and I'm like, that read pretty well. And so in that sense, it's really great. Now, I will also say that I self-published and found a big boo-boo in my book right as it came out. And it was, can I share that story?
You can, absolutely, because I had one that it was awful.
Yeah, so my book, I believe, starts out saying that August 22nd, or it said August 20-something, 1985 was one of the most special days in my life. And that was when my son was born. And so my book came out that morning. We did really well just right out the chute. I texted my son because I didn't tell him that, first of all, I had dedicated the book to him and my father, who was no longer alive, and that the book, talked about Adam. And so I get a text. So I said, did you download the book yet? And he texted me back and he said, unless you've been telling me wrong all these years, I'm pretty sure August, whatever I had put in, is not my birthday. And I'm like, oh my God. I had put his wrong birthday in the book.
Yeah, but nobody knew but you, right? And him.
Right. And the good thing about self-publishing, we were able to, change it. And yes, I had already ordered, fortunately, a smaller number of books in print. And so I remember I was giving them out to family members, and I looked at Adam. We had gotten together Thanksgiving, and I said, why don't you wait until I get my corrected books? And he said, oh no, Mom, I really want this one.
Of course he does.
So you have a story too of a goof?
I actually, so up until my third book, when people really started reading them, I had the same edit. Well, my first book, I had Stephen King's first editor, so it was pretty much perfect. My second one, someone had come to me and said, I'm a great editor. I've edited and ghostwritten for New York Times bestselling authors. So I let her edit it. And then, but nobody really said anything about the mistakes in it, because I'm a good storyteller. I'm not a great writer. And so my third book came out. It sold, all those copies. And then people started making the reviews or creating the reviews and like, who edited this? It's a great story, but it looks like somebody actually said, did a monkey edit this? And I was so I know. I was so embarrassed. And what was really sad was my third book had already been edited by her, and my fourth book was in her hands, so I had to pull it all back and really have it re-edited. But it was a big mistake for someone who would go on to open a publishing company. I learned a very valuable.
With the lessons we learn, I didn't get this quote smart because my life has been easy breezy all these years. It's because of all the gazillion mistakes and hardships I've had to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it is, I can appreciate that was a huge eye opener. Do you know how many times I looked at my own copy?
Oh, yeah.
And it never even clicked until my son said something. And I'm like, and even when I looked at it, I went, oh my gosh, I got his wrong birthday. How is that possible? So yeah.
Yeah, you
I
can't.
think I had August 25th and it was really August 22nd. So yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, maybe you were unconscious for 3 days. I mean, childbirth is traumatic, right? No.
Yeah.
No, but that is a really good lesson for everybody writing a book. Have somebody else read it and a professional do it, because we get a lot of books when I ask if they're edited. They'll say, "Oh, my friend's a school teacher." That's great, but they're not a professional editor that writes that sort of thing.
It's so very important. It's invaluable.
So how can you help people when they're going through this transformational writing journey? Like, what do you do to get them through it? Because obviously it's something that needs to be healed. If we become aware of it during the process and it's time to heal it, a lot of times we can't do it on our own.
Yeah, well, that's where I am now very blessed to be able to offer people not only relief, but freedom. I had a very serious accident a number of years ago. I was flying from Texas to LA. I was working with the Fortune 100 company, and I was sick. I should never have gone, but I was a type A workaholic kind of girl. The show must go on. And I went outside the Dallas airport, and unfortunately I passed out. I fell over a ledge. I fell about 25 feet. Oh. And was really, my right leg was shattered. It was multiple surgeries and about 11 months before I would ever know that I would be able to walk again, which I do. And I had some back fractures. And then I was later diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury that actually took quite some time. And if that was not enough, around 4 weeks into being in the hospital, my former husband came, suitcases packed, saying he no longer wished to be married any longer, which I take my fair share of the responsibility for that decision. The timing just was kind of yucky. And then if that was not enough, he happened to be an attorney, and when we went to court, he was awarded full custody of our son, who was only 4.5 at that time. And that's really when I broke into a whole lot of pieces. I had been fearless up to that point. People said, "Hey, can you do this?" I'm like, "Sure." And whatever it was, I would always figure it out. And so I was really a trailblazer. And now I didn't know who I was and what I could possibly trust. And interestingly enough, it was my mom who suggested that I might want to learn how to meditate. And quieting my mind was an oxymoron back at that point. And to make seriously. And so to make a long story a little bit shorter, I went to somebody to learn how to meditate, and my healing gifts started coming through me and started to be cultivated. And I have to say, I shared this because I was not that girl prior to my accident. I started to be able to see energy. I was able to see where there were blocks within people. I'm very grateful that I have a whole system today that I use with my clients, as well as training coaches and practitioners in it. And I can find the core of anything that's interfering, creating a misalignment, holding people back. And it people can shift very easily and quickly. There's also a brain training element in my system because there are a lot of people, wonderful people, that do release work.
Mhm.
But if you don't, first of all, it's very important to find the core, but also if you don't do brain training, you risk falling into a default pattern and repeating again. So my process eliminates that. So when people are discovering, maybe emotions that have been buried for a while, we have our system, both our mind and our bodies, do everything in their power to keep us safe. And so when you're writing a book, it may bring up memories, it may bring up emotions. And if you feel that it's a bit much, then you do want to reach out to somebody like me because we can help, make that transition a lot easier. I've worked with people with all types of issues. I do work with a lot of business owners just to help them accelerate their growth, their income, their profits. And yet I've worked with people who have been abused. I've worked with people with learning disabilities, both adults and children. I have fun. I get to work with some people that want to attract love. I never knew that was going to be one of my signatures. And couples who want to replenish their relationships. I've even helped people release weight because when we really find what is getting in the way, it's like, sliding on snow or ice. It's just so much smoother sailing. And when we hit those road bumps, typically it's a part of our inner world that's saying, whoa, this does not feel safe. And more times than not, it really is a safety issue or a not worthy issue are probably the two most common that happens. And I do know that almost everybody that I work with, I have to adjust what I call their receiver, their ability to receive more love and support. So, so that's a long explanation, but the gift of living in our world today is we really do have ways to, love those places back to health. I don't really know if I remove things. Well, I guess we do. But we infuse so much love into the energetic body that impacts the mind and the physicality. And it's just lovely what ends up happening. So yeah, it would make it a lot easier to write that book. It's possibly why I was able to just write mine in such a short time. And even to close the gap with anything that you're wanting to do. It also allows for more clarity and just, I believe when we align our mind and our hearts, words, there have been times I've written, it's like, wow, did I write that? I'm sure you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. I actually see days where it's like, darn, I'm such a great writer. And then it's other days I reread it and I'm like, wow, massive brain farts that day. Like, what was I thinking when I was writing? It is. So Wendy, where can we find you if we need help?
Oh, that's really easy. My website's wendydarling.com. And my email is wendy@wendydarling.com.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking about this today. It really is something that writers need to key in on. And I'm so glad I found a good writer to do that for us.
Oh, you're sweet. Thanks. I was happy to contribute.